guys, it's Misty. So today we are going to be making this adorable wool overcoat. This is in a newborn size. So I'm super excited to be sharing this with you guys. I'm going to tell you a little funny thing. I was so excited to be sharing this with you guys that I just recorded like 30 minutes of video and forgot to hit the record button. So I just jumped right in without doing anything at all that's necessary to make this actually happen. So let me just get right into talking about this little overcoat. As I said, this is made up for a size newborn. And there's a couple of things just about making baby garments, and this garment in particular, that I wanted to go over before we start making it so that we won't have to discuss any of that stuff later. So anytime that you're making anything out of like if it's a wool or a new fiber or something that the baby's not been exposed to, like this has got alpaca and wool. I think this yarn, this is a little bit of everything from Lion Brand. And if you'd like to see a review of this yarn, I'm going to link that down below for you. I've got a pretty in-depth review and that'll tell you a lot more about the yarn in particular. Now, this yarn does have 19% wool and 10% alpaca. And the rest is a 45% acrylic and a 26% cotton. So, for the most part, wools and alpaca is pretty safe for baby garments. I'd say there's very few instances that it's not. However, there are cases and have been cases where kids have had allergies, and so that's the reason that I kind of did this 3/4 length sleeve here. I did not want a sleeve that's going to be coming up and going into baby's mouth, so I just thought that it was a little bit wiser to leave this sleeve a little shorter. One, the baby will have a little more arm movement, and two, it'll kind of keep them from putting anything close to their hands up on that wrist into their mouth. So just in case there was, and these little fibers are kind of, the fuzzies don't really come out of this very much, but I'm sure if it was, I'm sure if a baby spent enough time eating it, that it probably would come out a little bit. So just trying to keep that out of the baby's mouth, I've made these sleeves a little shorter. I didn't see that as a problem to be wearing this in cool weather, because they'll fit right over their little long sleeves and be just fine. The other thing that I wanted to discuss is the button or any other applique that you put on baby garments. Now this is for a newborn, so the likelihood of the baby being able to pull this loose is not very likely, okay? And probably would not even be strong enough to ever pull something like that, and will outgrow the little coat long before they would be able to or even notice it's there. However, that being said, anytime I put anything on a baby garment, I always make sure and certain that I have sewn that button on better than I've ever sewn anything on in my life. I'm just a little bit obsessive about it. This button should be so sturdy that there's no way that it's coming out of there, okay? It can be pulled on, tugged on, chewed on. It is not coming loose. I've got it on there so tight. This garment will probably dry rot around that button before it comes undone. And I know that probably sounds a little bit over the top, but I just, I'm like that with my own kids. I am an overprotective kind of person, and I just want to make certain that everything that I put on any baby garment is really safe. As baby gets older, I probably would put less, say around the The 6-month age, I would probably worry a little bit more, 4, 5, 6 months, about them pulling things loose and being able to get things in their mouth. So that's just something for you to think about and consider when you make baby garments of your own. It's fine to put these decorative things on there, and you know what I love the most about this little coat is it looks so grown up. It gives me all like 1930s and 40s kind of feel, you know. It looks very mature, and I just think that is so cute. And part of that design is this button, this big oversized button up here. And that's fine. We just want to be careful when we put applications like that on our baby garments. And I just want to make you aware of that so that you'll just check and double check, just to put a little safety out in the universe. Okay, so we are going to do this today in a beautiful green color. The day I'm filming this is St. Patrick's Day. So I know that the video is not going to be up on St. Patrick's Day, but happy belated St. Patrick's Day to everyone out there. I hope you've got your green on. I've at least got my nails. This color, the yellow, is done in the color Solar, and it has been beautiful to work with. And so today we are going to do it in this beautiful green that is called Firefly Forest, and I just want to show you up close kind of what that looks like. It is delightful. Okay, so that's what we're going to be working this in today. We are going to be making just a couple of changes. This was kind of my first draft of this coat, and it's gorgeous. There's nothing wrong with it. But I did a wide waistband right here, and after having done it, I'd kind of, these are single crochets. There's like 4 rows of single crochet here. I'm probably just going to go in with 1 before I start the crunch stitch, because I really like this, and I like it the way this looks better than I do these 4 rows. So we're going to move that crunch stitch on up, and that'll be a little bit of a change. But other than that, we're pretty much good to go. So this is going to be done in, there'll be like 5 sections, 5 panels, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a few minutes. This is not going to be hard. We are going to be starting out with a 6mm hook. Now this yarn does call for a 6.5. However, I found when working with it, especially these double crochets, that the 6mm brought them in just a little bit more snugly, and I liked the way that came out. Now when we get down here past our 1 row of single, I think we're going to switch up and go into our 6.5mm just to give this a little bit softer of a drape. Okay, and we'll get to all that. So first off, let's just move this out of the way, and let's start making our coat. The first thing we're going to do is make our slip knot. And of course, I will leave you a link below if you need help making a slip knot. Just check right down there. I'll have a couple of videos listed for you. And let me pull you on in. And we're going to start with a chain of 36. So let's just get right to it. There's 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we have a chain of 36. And what we're going to do is we are going to go right into the second one from the hook right there, and we are going to single crochet, and we are going to single crochet into every stitch in the chain. So we're going to make 35 single crochets, and I will meet you back at the end. Okay, so once we have single crocheted into every stitch down the chain, we are going to chain 2 and turn our work. All right, this chain 2 is not going to represent a stitch, and we are going to double crochet into 6 stitches. So let's go right into this first one, yarn over and double crochet right into that first one, and then here is number 2, there's stitch number 3, there's number 4, here is number 5, going right in there. Here is number 6. Okay, so we've got our first 6 double crochets in, and now in our 7th one we are going to double crochet and then we are going to chain 2 and do another double crochet right into that same space. Okay, so that's where we're at. Everything is going so noisy in my house right now. I've got a little dog marching around. My big dog is wanting all my attention. My daughter just came home from school. She's right above us in her room, rolling around in her little office chair up there. If it's a noise and it can be made, it's happening right now. All right, so now we're going to do the next 6 in double crochet. Okay, so go right into that next one and double crochet, and into the next one there's 2, 3, 4, 5. It sounds like it's thundering up there. 6. And here is number 7. We're going to go in there with a double and then a chain 2. There's 1 and 2, and then another double right in that same space. And now we're going to be doing 6 more. So go right into that very next one with a double crochet. And now my dog's over there guzzling water, so I'm sorry if you're hearing all my racket. All this real life stuff's happening all around me. Oh. 1, 2, 3. We're on number 4. I have a black lab named Apple. She sounds like a horse when she comes through here. And we're on number 5. Sorry for the distractions. And number 6. And now we're going to go into number 7 with a double crochet and a chain 2 and another double crochet. And now we'll do 6 more of our doubles. What did you all do for St. Patrick's Day? I have got a corned beef, roast going. I've got some cabbage and potatoes. Do you all celebrate St. Patrick's Day? Do you make a special meal? Let me know. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're on number 5. And 6. Okay, so now we're on stitch number 7 right there. And we are going to go in with a double crochet and a chain 2 and another double crochet. And now we'll do double crochets in this remaining 7. So there's 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And now this time we won't be doing anything but making a single double crochet, or I should say one double crochet, not a single double. Okay, so this is going to be what we're dealing with here. All right, see this? We've got 5 little panels going here. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now as we grow, this is going to just get bigger and bigger, and we are going to be able to bring it around and close it up for the top of our coat. All right, so next we are going to be doing another round of double crochet. So let's go ahead and get that started. We are going to chain 2 and turn and go right into this first stitch. We're not counting our chain 2 as a stitch in this pattern, so yarn over, go right into that first one and double crochet, and then we are going to double crochet all the way across until we get to a corner space. Let's see, I should count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6, and 7, and 8. And for our 9th stitch here, we are going to be yarning over and going into this chain 2 space and drawing up our loop and making a double crochet, and then chain 2 and another double crochet. Okay, just like that. And now we're going to go right back and start in with our regular doubles. Here's our first one. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and our 9th one is going right here into that chain 2 space. So put your double crochet in there, chain 2, and another double crochet. And now we're going right back into a regular double. There's 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 5, 6, 7 and 8 right there. And then our chain 2 space is right here. We're going to go right in there with a double crochet, chain 2, and a double crochet. Okay, so see how we're growing? All right, we're going to do these last 2 sections. So we're going right in here for our regular double crochet, right in the top of that stitch. It's been a crazy week around here. How's your all's week been? Mine has been, I've really struggled to even get my videos up this week. I've suffered with like a cold and sore throat, and it seemed like every day I was having was sort of dropping off a twig before it ever even got started. You guys ever have weeks and days like that? It's just sort of been a rough, long week. I am glad that it's St. Patrick's Day, though. And I'm happy that I'm getting back in the groove of things now. Okay, we got 2 more of these double crochets. This one. And now we are going right into that chain 2 space with a double crochet, chain 2, and a double crochet. Now we're going to be doing this last leg. So there's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, and right here on the end we have our chain 2 space that we need to get into right there. So just grab a piece of it if it's hiding. Sometimes it's tucked away and hard to get into, but just get as much of it as you can. There we go. And double crochet. All right. So that's what we're looking like now. And we are just going to keep growing. That was our 2nd row of doubles. And now I'm going to leave you guys here. So to get the next 3 rows, we've got 5 rows total of double crochets. Okay, so from here we're just going to chain 2, turn, and get right back into doing these double crochets. So let's put one in the very first, and I'm going to leave you guys here to finish this, these 5 rows, and then I will meet you back around before we move on. Okay, so we've got our 5 rows of double crochet, and we're starting to see things kind of come together here. All right, now it is time to join some of this up and make our sleeves. I am going to be making a slight change from what I did in the yellow coat. So we'll talk about that first and then we'll get going. So to make sleeves here, if you've never done this before as far as making sleeves, do not worry about it for an instant. It is so simple. If you've never done it or you've been putting off doing something like this, you'll be surprised how easy it is. These sections right here, right between these spaces, these are our sleeves, okay? This is the front of our coat, so it's going to overlap like that, okay? And then these are going to be our sleeves right here between these spaces, and this is our back. Now, I'll show you on the yellow one, okay? So this is the first row, these 2 in the front. Then we've got these chain 2 spaces. And if you turn it over, here's some more of the chain 2 spaces. And this is that space in between, making up our sleeve. And then here is our back panel. Okay? So if you notice right here in this first coat that I did, these chain 2 spaces, they come right down, and what ends up happening is there is a chain 2 space right here in this armpit of the arm. That is, I mean, it's not unsightly or anything, but when you're stitching around and doing your arm, it can be, in my opinion, a little bit it just makes you feel like there's a hole or a gap there that you need to fill up, because it's right there under that armpit area. So I'm going to try and alter that a little bit with this green one, and we'll see whether it works or whether it doesn't. But what we're going to do is, instead of bringing our sleeve together after the chain 2 space, I'm going to bring our sleeve together right before the chain 2 space. So these chain 2 spaces will run down the front and back sides of our coat. Okay? All right. We'll see if just bear with me here, and we will see if it works. Doing this kind of craft is, I would say, at least 50% experimentation, if not more. Okay, so we're just going to chain up 1. We are going to make this join with just a row of single crochets around, okay? So we've chained 1. Let's just turn our work. And we're going to go right into that first stitch and put a single crochet, and then single crochet every stitch until we get to that last one right before the chain 2 space. So our front pieces, they should have 12 stitches. And our sleeve stitches and our back panel should have 16 stitches. So if you notice, you don't have as many in the 2 front flaps. That's true because you didn't have a second chain 2 space increase at the end. So you only got 1 increase per row on these outer panels. So I'm going to go to right here, okay, right here in this, nope, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go right through this chain 2 space, and I'm going to put 2 single crochets in that space. Okay, so I'm just going to close up that gap entirely in my next row. So go ahead and put 2 single crochets right in there, and then I'm going to go right here into that next stitch and go ahead and make a single crochet, and then we are going to go pick up our next to the last stitch right here, and we're going to bring these two together just like that. Okay, just like that. Just bring your 2 chain spaces right up side by side, and over here on this side, that stitch right there before the chain space right there, put your hook right into that stitch. And now I am not going to pull through and slip stitch here, which may make you feel like that's what's going to happen. I am going to bring my yarn up, and I'm going to single crochet. And basically what I've done here is I have single crocheted right across that join without losing any stitches, you see? And now 2 single crochets into that chain space, and you'll see more what I'm talking about. So this, instead of becoming some slip stitch situation right here, it is literally just a stitch for every stitch. Okay, so we don't have any slip stitches putting these arms together, and we won't have any lost stitches doing that. All right, so just go on down now with your single crochet and keep right on going over this back piece. Okay, we're coming up on our chain 2 space, and so we want it on the outside of our sleeve this time, so we're just going to go straight into there and put 2 single crochets right in there, and then this stitch, the very next one after the chain 2 space, we're going to put a single crochet in that one, and then we're going to come right over here and bring these 2 chain spaces together just like that, and in this stitch right here beside the chain space, we're going to put our hook right in there just like we did before. We're going to draw up our loop and single crochet just like that was the next stitch in the row for us. Okay, and now go ahead and put 2 single crochets into that chain space and continue right on going to the end of the row. Okay, so we got all of our stitches in, and now let's take a look at how our little coat is coming along. Okay, we're going to have a perfect little space here for our button. And look here, we've got our arms in here, and they're still plenty big enough. This yarn has got a good stretch to it right there. But look, you can see my white table through these chain spaces. And we've put, can you see that? And we have put these chain spaces coming right down the body and right down the back, instead of being in that armpit area, instead of being in that armpit area where they would feel awkward, they're right outside of that area. So here's our armpit, and here's these chain spaces, and that's going to work out a whole lot better when anybody's actually wearing our garment. And also make us feel less cluttered over here in the arm when we start going around and making our sleeve. So that is where we are, right down to the waist. And next we are going to be going in with the skirt of our coat. Okay, so I want to stop and make a note here about the pattern. Now, here is where things are going to change just a little bit. So, we've already done our single crochet all the way around and made our joins. So, at this point, this one is going to move on to a larger size hook and go on into our crunch stitch. The yellow pattern is going to do 4 more or 3 more, 4 total rows of single crochet. Okay, so if you want your coat to look like the yellow one, then you'll do 3 more rows of single before you start your crunch rows. Okay, and this is a denser product. Okay, this is very dense, and what I did here was just like on the green. Now this yarn calls for a 6.5 millimeter, but because I wanted these double crochets to have a little more density, I went a size down into a 6 millimeter. So we've been working with the 6 millimeter the majority of the time here. And with this one, the yellow one, that's what you will continue with. So you'll keep this same density of fabric going throughout the entire thing. So if you want yours to be like this one, you'll make 3 more rows of single crochet before you start your crunch stitch. Now in the green one, the change up that I'm doing here in the green one is I wanted to try this yarn with a little bit more drape and see how that goes. So I skipped over this 6.5 and I'm going straight into a 7. So I'm going from a 6 to a 7 to do the crunch stitch. I'm also not doing those extra rows of single crochet for the waist. I'm only doing the one where I made the joins. So if you're wanting to do like the yellow one, then you'll just continue making those single crochets now for 3 more rows before you start your crunch. And if you want this tighter coat, this more dense fabric to your coat, then you'll stay with the 6 millimeter or that smaller hook size and not move up to the larger one. Okay, so that'll just be up to you. But for me, on this green one, I'm going to move into this larger hook and start my crunch. So let's just start there. Okay, to start our crunch stitch, we are going to chain 1 and turn our work. And into this first stitch right there, we are going to yarn over and put a half double crochet. Alright, if you need help with a half double crochet, I will leave you a link down below that will help you with that. Now, next we are going to go into our next stitch and make a slip stitch. So right into there. And then next we're going to do a half double, followed by a slip stitch. This first row here that I'm doing into the single crochets, I'm doing a half double now. That is going to be a little bit tighter because those were made with a smaller hook. So I'm going into them now with my 7 millimeter. And so it's a little bit tighter getting it to squeeze through, but our next row should be easier. Okay, next we're doing a slip stitch, and this is all we're doing. We're doing half double crochets into one stitch, and then slip stitch into the next. Just like that. Half double into one stitch, and slip stitch right into the next. Okay, half double into the next, and then slip stitch into the next. And now I wanted to bring you here to the break, because this is where we joined our sleeve, right? But if you'll see here, we've just crocheted right past that sleeve when we put in those single crochets. So we are literally just going to bypass that whole sleeve and just into the next. What did we have left? A half. Okay. All right, I had to back up because I lost my count. All right, there's a half double into that one, and then right here where this sleeve is, we're going to slip stitch there, and then right here, these that I was talking about, we are going to slip stitch right into that one right below that sleeve, and we're going to half double, just keep them right with our stitch pattern, half double right into that next one, and then slip stitch into the next one. And this is all we're doing. Half double into the next, slip stitch into the next. So you guys continue on, half double into one stitch and slip stitch into the next stitch. You guys continue on with your crunch stitch, and I will meet you at the end of the row. Okay, so we have 2 stitches left here, and I just wanted to show you that our next to the last one here is going to be a slip stitch, and we're going to be ending on this half double crochet. So we started the round with a half double crochet. That is really tight in there with that smaller hook. We started the round with a half double crochet, and we're going to end the round with a half double crochet. Okay. So for row 2, we're just going to chain 1 and turn our work. Now, you can see really clearly these half double crochets from the row before. If you're familiar with that stitch, you know it leaves this little telltale third leg there. Okay, so everything we did in the first round, or the first row of the crunch stitch, we are going to do the opposite of that in the second row. Okay, so everywhere you see this half double from the row before, it's going to be really easy to tell where your stitches go. It makes this stitch really fun to do because you don't have to spend a lot of time searching and looking at anything. So right here, we know this was a half double from the row before. We're going to go right in there and make our slip stitch. Okay, and then the ones that get tricky is the half double crochets go into these slip stitches from the row before. So we're going to go yarn over and squeeze the hook in there into those little skinny slip stitches, and that's where we're going to put our half double crochets. And right here you can see this bulky one, our slip stitch, we're going to be going right in between there and making our slip stitch. Okay, so this is how this is going to go all the way through to the end of the row, and we'll be ending this row with a slip stitch. Remember, we started with a slip stitch, we're going to end with a slip stitch. So we're going to do these crunch stitches. If you are doing all crunch stitches with me instead of the extra 3 rows of single crochet, we are going to do this for 18 rows. And so we're on 2 now. We've got this one and 16 more to go, and then we're going to stop and measure our work and check it against the sizing of our coat. So I won't know for sure whether 18 is where we're going to end until we come back to measure. All right, guys, we are back. I had to have some coffee. Oh, I've got I'm trying to get everything I need together, and I have like jute twine stuck to my scissors. So, you ever just feel like everything around you is a mess? That's how I feel right now. Okay, so I've been working on this little coat, and when we left, we were starting these crunch stitch series through here, and we had changed out, or I had changed out to a 7mm. And so if you're doing this pattern and you don't have a 7, you could go up even higher. You could just go up to a 6.5, or you could keep it more dense like the little yellow coat is. Now I'll show you the difference here. So here is the yellow, and if you can see the kind of stretch that the yellow have, it stretches pretty nicely, but it is just a little more compact in there, right? And then this one, if you'll watch, it's got a lot more stretch and a little more breathability in there. So it's just a little more, I wouldn't call it drapey. It's a very sturdy coat. It was designed to be that way. So we're not necessarily trying to create drape per se, but definitely it is a sturdy coat. So I was just comparing my sizes here, which really I won't be able to compare much until we get our trim done. But the green one might play out to be just a touch bigger, which will probably just give baby a little more time in the coat. So that's okay. So we've been doing the crunch stitch, and I think I ended up, I think I still ended up with 20 rows. When you're counting your crunch stitch, you can tell which one is the lower one by, if you hold your, let me bring you in some. Okay, so when you're looking, you can see that this row, and really what these rows right here are caused by, these are caused by that third leg of those half double crochets. That's what makes this sort of wave pattern happen in this stitch. And if you'll look, this is on this level, and this one over here is on this level. So you can tell that this one is your first row. And if you'll remember, we did a slip stitch first into that first row. And where did we? Either way, this is our first row right here, and this is our second row. So every row, if you're looking at the front of the coat, every one of these, what looks to me like waves, every one of these you can count 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20 down here on the bottom, making up that bottom little ruffle there. So that's 20 rows. Comparatively to the yellow coat, you probably could get away with 18. So if you didn't mind your coat being just a smidge shorter, you could get away with 18 rows. So let's see. Yeah, I wanted mine to be 10 inches, and it's come out at exactly 10 inches. But you'd definitely be okay at 9.5. So 18 to 20 rows. It's written for 20. And I thought I could get away with 18, but I went ahead and did 20. So either or, you should be fine. Now what we're going to do is, if you notice on the yellow coat, we have this little scallop edge that's going along there. And I do this on a lot of projects, and it is super simple and is not going to take much. So I'm going to show you how we're going to start that. So to do this bottom part of our coat, I sized up. Now we're going to change back to our 6 to do this scalloped edge. Okay, I'm doing that because it's not going to make much of a difference here, down here on these lower ones that we're using the 6 instead of the 7. But up here where we were using the 6, it probably you know, it might make a difference as far as comfort of being able to get in and out of your stitches. And we're also going to be crocheting around this top part, and we used a 6 up here too. So I'm going to switch now back to my 6mm hook. I'm going to go ahead and chain 3. Okay, so we've got our 3 chains, and all we are going to do is on these crunch stitches, it's kind of easy to tell. You've got a row. Here we're going to be looking at the back. So you're going to have a row of waves right here where the legs are kind of standing up. And then you're going to have a row that's flat. And in each space, we are going to skip a row, and then we're going to put a slip stitch into this flat row right here. Okay, so we're going to be skipping over this little ruffly part, and we're going to put a slip stitch right there in the flat, right in the middle of it, right like that. And just slip stitch in there. And I'm going to bring you back in a little bit tighter. Okay, so now chain 3. This is all we're going to do to make these little scallops. Okay, so we're going to skip this little ruffle right there. We're going to skip the little wave of that crunch stitch, and we're going to go right in this flat part, and it'll fall like, see where it's opened up where we made a half double below it right there. We're just going to go right into that, right in the middle of that flat part. And oh, I lost it. Sorry about that. We're going to go right in the middle of the flat part, bring it out, and slip stitch. Now chain 3. Skip over this wave and go right in to this flat area right here that's got that. See, if you pull it apart, you'll find right where you're supposed to go into. Do you see that? If you pull it apart, you're going to be going in right there. And right into that little hole in the flat, we're going to go right in there and place a slip stitch. And do you see what's going on here with our little ruffle we're making? And if you look, this crunch stitch makes kind of a natural ruffle, and it'll all kind of look like it's flowing together when we're finished. Okay, so chain 3, skip over this half double row and go right into that open space in the flat area and slip stitch. Chain 3, go into that flat space above that half double and slip stitch, and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Go right there into that open space above the half double and place your slip stitch. And we're going to do this all the way up. Well, we'll just keep going here because we're going to get above this crunch stitch in a minute, and then things will change just a little bit. I think that it's easier really to go into these little crunch stitches because you can make them all even. You know, you pretty much know right where you're going, and then all of your little scallops end up about the same. They might change up a little when we get out of this pattern of stitches, but it won't be much. And then slip stitch. And then here we're going to do it one more time, and we're going to go into the bottom of where this single crochet is right there before our crunch is even started. So go ahead and chain 3. And we're going to go, if you'll see right there, we've got this row of single crochets right before we did the half double, and if you pull those apart, you've got a space right there, and that's where we're going with that slip stitch. Okay, now we are getting into these doubles. And what we're going to do is you're just going to space as evenly as you can. So really, you were going over 2 rows every time. So it should be about like that. It's not going to be much different. So go ahead and chain 3. I guess I'm saying it won't be any noticeable difference. And what I like to do here is I like to just sort of go into this double. If you'll look right in between your doubles, there is like a little space there. You see that? That's got yarn on both sides of it. It's like the first leg of your double crochet. Do you see that? Right there. And that is where I like to put my hook in. Right there. And slip stitch. Okay, and it just gives you just enough space for that scallop. So go ahead and chain 3. And once again, if you'll pull those doubles down like that, you'll find that open space. It's like a singular space in, at the top and bottom of each double crochet. And go ahead and go right into there and slip stitch and chain 3. We are going to be right there into that space and chain 3. And we've got another one right there. That one is looking not as easy to get into. Wiggle it in there. And if you're off a little bit, like if your stitch goes into the double, inside the main leg of that double crochet, it won't make any difference. Those scallops can only slide so far down anyhow. And now look, you have just enough space to get right up here to this top one. You see that? So go 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to go right in to this top. We're going to go in from the underside right there to this top stitch. You see that? And slip stitch. So we're going to chain 3. And we are just going to swivel our work around like this, okay? And these up here are single crochets. So here on the end we're not going to go into this first stitch. We're going to skip the next stitch and go into the third one. Right like that. And slip stitch. Okay. And now chain 3. And we're going to skip 1 and go right here into this second one. And chain 3. And we're going to skip 1. See, we're halfway over into this main stitch that we're in. Then we're going to skip the next one and go into the next one. So we skip 1, go into the next. We're going to do that into those, what these are, they're not single crochets, so to speak, but they are the back side of our original chain. Okay, so they are the first of where we made our first row of singles. And we're going to slip stitch and we're going to chain 3. We're going to skip the next one and go into the second one. Slip stitch and chain 3. And we're going to skip right here and go in right here. Now, if you find that your little scallops are looking too tall, it's fine to spread these out a little bit. If they're not if they're not coming up exactly, it is okay. Don't worry over much about that. What you really want is just some basic even spacing, and just to get those little humps in there as best you can. This is not an exact science. We're kind of eyeballing it here. Okay, so right here I felt like I was a little bit up high, and so I just spread it out a little bit more. And now I seem to be back regular, and probably that had a lot to do with the tension I had, and how big my little chain stitches were when I made my first, when I made the original chain. So sometimes, especially when we're going back into the chain, it might look a little bit odd, but it won't show when we're all finished. It's all going to come together. So I'm going to skip one here and go right into here and slip stitch. So chain 3 and skip one and go into this one over here. And like I said, if these aren't perfectly spaced, that's okay. Just do the best you can. You just get them spaced out as best you can, and they're going to look really lovely. And when it's all said and done, they're going to look pretty even. So mostly I'm just skipping one and going into one. And if I feel like things are getting a little too tall, I'll space it over one, So it's just a little eyeballing. I noticed something the other day. When you hear yourself, like when I make these videos and then I go back and I'm like editing and stuff, and you hear yourself on camera and your voice sounds strange. I noticed that it's the weirdest thing. You ever notice, like, you can find the weirdest things and it just starts sounding really weird to your ears? Like, one word will just start sounding really weird. I noticed the other day when I was editing that I thought I'd say the word 3 really weird, because I was like, everything I'd say I'd be like, 3. And I thought, you remember that owl, like the center of a lollipop, the center of a Tootsie Pop sucker or whatever it was? And he would always be like, 1, 2, 3. And that would be like it. And I was like, oh my God. I say 3 like the Tootsie Pop owl. Anyway, random thing you probably didn't want to know. So here we are at the very end, and look, we've got just enough, so we're skipping, and I'm just going to kind of lean it over here a little bit more and go into the top of that one right there, and that'll give us all the little scallops we need. And they may not all be exactly perfect, but they're going to look really pretty. So from here, we're going to chain 3, and we're going to go back on the side here, and we'll be going right, let's see, how did we make it work over there? We came right from this down here. So we didn't go into this like immediate one here. We were down here. So somewhere near the bottom of that first double crochet and slip stitch. So we're just going to make our way around there in one piece. Okay, so chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And we are going to be going into this space right there. So now we're back to finding those little open spaces between the doubles. So chain 3 and go down here, and you can see there's a space right there at the bottom of that double crochet. Chain 3, and we've got another one right there, and chain 3, and we've got another one right there, and that is the one that is just over top of that row of single crochets. So now we're back on our little crunch stitches here. So chain 3, and we'll be right down underneath here, pull it apart, you'll see your space, and we're going right in to just underneath that crunch stitch, and slip stitch, chain 3, and right there underneath that one, chain 3, find these half doubles and pull them apart, and there's our space right in the flat part, and slip stitch, chain 3, and there is our little space right there in the flat part, and slip stitch, chain 3, and right there in the flat part you'll see that little open space, chain 3, and we are just going to run this out all the way to the end, and then we can work on sleeves right there into that flat space. And slip stitch, chain 3, right there, and slip stitch, we'll be going right there, chain 3, and now if you wanted your little scallops to be more compact, like if you wanted them to lay a little flatter, you can always chain 2. So you can change it up that way too. So go ahead and chain 3. And what we're going to do here at the bottom is we are going to go into, see right here, we've got a stitch right here, our last half double in that row. We're going to go right there into that stitch and slip stitch our last scallop. Okay, so go ahead now and fasten off your work. Tighten it down. And now when we weave in our end here, we'll be pulling this a little bit snug and hiding that knot, and that scallop will work its way just right into the rest of that ridge. But now let's look at what we have on the outside. Okay, it's a little bit hard to see, just green on green, isn't it? See our scallop here? And then it runs into the bottom of our coat all along. This one is going to pull down this way when we weave our ends in, so don't worry about him. So there that is. Nobody will be able to tell. And then their scallop runs all the way up here. And then we have the scallop. I'm going to pull this where I was trying to hide that. It didn't go very well. I'm going to pull it out so I can weave it in neater. And then we have the scalloped edge then all the way along the top. And when our little coat goes together, that little scalloped edge is going to be right there along our collar. You see that? You might be able to see it better on the little yellow one because of that lighter color. But you see this little scalloped edge there? Same thing, just chain 3s. And also doing it in the smaller hook also helps to keep them a little bit more uniform and you know, not to get oversized. So you can do this in any which way that you like. You can chain 2 or you can chain 3 to make your little scalloped edge. You can stretch it out longer or you can make it closer. So you could skip 1 or you could skip 2. Whatever suits your style the best. I like for my little scallop edge to be pretty obvious because I just enjoy that and it just makes it look pretty. But it's going to look pretty and neat whether you make your scallops big or small. Either way will be fine. This one came out a little bit smaller, but our stitches were not quite as tall because of our hook size and stuff. So, you know, they both look a little bit different even though they've been made almost exactly the same. So these little changes that you make can make a big difference. Okay, let's put this one aside. Well, before I do, let me tell you, if you want your sleeves to look like this one, really, if you did the 4 rows of single crochet here instead of going right into your crunch stitch, you'll want to do that same thing over here. We've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 rows of single crochet going around our sleeve on this one, and then a scalloped edge. No, let me see, 1 row of crunch over here. We're going to be doing about, I think, probably 4 rows of crunch. So the first thing we're going to do, at first we're going to be sticking with our 6mm because we want to come in here and put our row of single crochets in just like we did here on our coat. We put our single crochets in and then we're going to start our crunch stitch. So let's get us some yarn going. And I like to start in the back, so if I mess anything up, it's a little bit less noticeable. Also, I know I've shown you this before, but when I start my yarn, when I attach like this, a lot of times I'll just go in and then go up, but most of the time I like to go ahead and slip my slip knot off of my hook, and then I like to go in to this bottom stitch, the one on the main bottom, and then I like to slip my slip knot back in. It's not necessary, it's just something that I like to do because I like to pull it through and chain 1, and then I hold it. When I pull it through, I grab that knot, I grab the knot from my slip knot and I hold it back here, and then I chain 1, and then I'm ready. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this same stitch and I'm going to make a single crochet, and then I'm going to make a single crochet in every stitch of the round, and I'm going to go ahead, matter of fact, let me pull that one out. I'm going to go ahead and cover up my tail. I'm going to crochet right over this tail as I make these single crochets so that I won't have to bother with that later. So just go ahead and make a single crochet in every stitch all the way around that sleeve, and then I will meet you back before we start the next row. Okay, we're almost around, and I just wanted to show you this right here. This is an easy stitch to miss if you're not careful. Okay, right here on this back stitch, this is where we started. Okay, now you have got right where these right where our coat came together and joined, there is a stitch right in there that sort of spans through here, and be real sure to get up under there, right in the middle, right in the armpit of this coat. Okay, right there, be real sure to get that one. And then we're going to be joining right here to that very first stitch, not right here. This is our chain 1. Okay, this is going to pull in close, and that is going to help close the gap for us. Okay, so we're going to go right into the next V. Right here is our first official stitch, and we're going to pull together for a slip stitch, and then that is going to be, see, we've got some little holes in here just naturally, and then it just sort of closes up that space, and if there is a little hole here and here, it just looks like part of the work. You see that? And then it just looks natural. Okay, so now we're going to be doing our crunch stitch, and for that we are going to change out our hook so that our arm is going to flare and be a little bit looser with our little crunch stitch. So we're going to switch out our 6 and pick up our 7. Okay, and we are going to chain 1. And we're going to go right back into this same space with a slip stitch. Okay. And then we're going to yarn over and go right into the next one with a half double crochet. And I like to keep those slip stitches really loose. Okay. So put that 7 hook in there. Pull up that yarn. Make sure that you're bringing that down your hook so that you're opening that stitch up. Don't leave it too close to the throat up in here, or your stitch will not be big enough. And then your slip stitch, when you're trying to get through it on the other side to make a half double, it's going to be too tight. So make sure you pull those stitches down your hook before you make your slip stitch so that you're leaving them wide enough. And then you're going to go into the next one with your half double. Again, bring those stitches all the way down so that they're opening up for you. And then a slip stitch. And then a half double. Okay, and then a slip stitch. So we're going right in there, and notice I pulled this even all the way down. When I'm pushing through, I'm really opening that stitch up. Okay, pull through your yarn and pull up again. You see how I'm pulling up? I'm pulling up right like that to really widen that stitch out, and then I'm letting it come right back down here, rotating my hook and pulling it straight down under there. Okay, yarn over then and going right in for that half double. I'm opening that stitch up, grabbing my yarn, pulling up, and again I'm giving it this move right here to pull this stitch up to its full potential before I yarn over and pull through all 3. I'm making these stitches as wide as they can be so that they will be nice and loose when I try to come through them on the other side. One thing we're going to be doing on the sleeves here that you might not have done before is we are going to be, we're working in the round, but we're actually going to be turning our work when we get to the end here. Maybe you've done that, maybe you haven't. It's super easy. If you haven't, you will get it right off, I'm sure. Pulling through for that slip stitch, then that half double, and then a slip stitch right here, and then a half double right into that bottom again for the half double, and then right in, not this first one right there where we chained, but into that next one, our slip stitch. Go right in there and slip stitch right together. Okay, so there is our first row of crunch. Now we are going to chain 1, and instead of going right into here, we're going to turn our work around. Okay, so now we are going to be going into the back of our sleeve. Okay, so we were crocheting on the outside of it. Now we're going to come in here and crochet on the inside of it. So right here into this stitch we were just into, we have a slip stitch, right? We just made our slip stitch and then we turned. And that space is right in here. It's really the back end of the stitch. We made our slip stitch over here, but since we turned, we're going to be going into the back end of it. So we're going to go into that same space, the back end of that stitch, yarn over and squeeze your hook in there. Just make it go. Pull up on your stitches. Yarn over and pull through all three, and then we're going to be going right into the next just like we did normal for our slip stitch. Okay, our next one is a slip stitch on the other side. We're going to put a half double crochet in there, and if you've pulled up on those stitches, you can see those slip stitches are going to be easier for you to get into. Then we have a slip stitch. Then our next one right here was our slip stitch on the other side. We're putting a half double right in that one. And then a slip stitch. And then a half double. And we are going to keep going around just like this, okay? And when we get to the end, we're going to slip stitch to join just like always. And then we're going to turn our work. And we'll be working on the outside of our sleeve then, just like we were in the first round. So we're going to do 4 rounds of this crunch stitch. Okay, so this that I'm on is round number 2. And when we get to the end, we're going to turn and go around one time. And then we're going to turn and go back around the inside one time. And that is going to be all there is to finishing this sleeve up, and then I'll meet you back when we get finished. Okay, so I have finished the 4 rows here on my sleeve, and as you can see, it gives us 2 rows of this wave there, and then this little scalloped edge, and then the same thing on the inside. Okay, and it's a little bit different. I'm going to compare it to the yellow one. Now see, on the yellow one, this is the sleeve difference here. We've got 4 rows of single and then 1 little scallop row. And here I did the 1 row of single to divide, just like we did on the coat, and then I did 4 rows of the scallop. I think I like this sleeve better. It just looks a little bit more finished, you know. It just looks a little bit more complete, but really it's a personal preference. I mean, whatever, if this line of single crochet appeals to your eye more than just going straight into this crunch, you could do this pattern either way. It's just up to you. It's your personal taste. So we're about to get finished up here. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to leave you to it to do your other arm, and I'm going to do my other arm. And again, you're going to start with that row of single crochet, and then start that row of single crochet with the first hook you use, whether it was a 6 or whether it was something else of your choice. But start with your 6 hook, and then after you get that row of single crochet done, switch over to your 7mm or whatever size you're choosing to use, and then do 4 rows of that crunch stitch. And then I'm going to go ahead then and weave in all my tails. So I will meet you back here once my sleeve is done and all my tails are woven in, and then we're going to be ready to start talking about buttons and finishing up our coat and seeing what it looks like in the end. All right, so I've got both of my sleeves finished. And look at that, how cute that is. Is that not just adorable? Okay, so first off, let's talk about the changes that we made. So this pattern, well, hold on, my computer's doing something funny. Okay, all right. So obviously this coat is a little bit bigger. So I think that this, just making these few changes. So we started out same size yarn, okay? And we started out with the same size hook. We started out with that 6mm. And we started out with the same amount of chains, okay? And then excuse me, I lost my throat there for a minute. And then we started making some changes gradual. We got our double crochets in here and here, okay? But when it came time to join our when it came time to like close off our armholes and to join our body, on this one we joined right at this seam of corners. You see that? And then what happened was it creates a hole under that armpit. Okay, it's even and lovely and it looks pretty, right? And but what I wanted, I decided to make a change that would close up this armpit hole, right? So this one is done with the holes coming all the way down and through the armpit. And then this one, I put this corner work to the front and then to the back. So in other words, I joined before I got to the corner on each one of them, front and back. So I went through the corner and then joined, and went around and joined before I got to the corner, so that my corners ended up in the body of my work instead of my arms. So that really made this on the back kind of go, see that line that it has now on the back where it's just kind of coming down, whereas this one, you see the difference there? This one has got a little more, a little bit more of a taper in here, and then this denser skirt. So, there's that change. Like this one ended up with more stitches around the body, and this one ended up with more stitches through the chest and the arms, and a little less through the body on this denser skirt. And this one I opened it up more and gave more stitches. So I would actually go from saying this started with this is newborn, right? And then when we got down here, I still wanted these stitches to expand, so I gave them that, I went in and did that larger hook size and put this bottom half in a 7. And just making those few adjustments, we've really taken this from newborn to probably 0 to 3. You know, maybe even a little bit more. So the baby, I'd say newborn can definitely, you know, probably wear it. If we put it on like that, we can see that they are very similar in size, right? But this green one, just making those changes without changing a thing about the numbers or a thing about the pattern other than the hook size that we use and where we connected our arms, we've made sort of a different sized garment. And it can be just that easy. You can make just a few subtle changes, and it makes a big impact. So that's just, I thought that would be a good thing for you to see. And you can do the pattern both ways and come up with a different size result. Another thing that made a difference was we widened out this sleeve here, because really doing it in a 6mm, just like this sleeve, you know, it was going to come out a little bit smaller than the width of this one, right? But when we changed that hook size and went into that 7 to do these bottom crunches, it sort of flared this sleeve back out and gave it so the baby can get its arm all through here. But now this we flared out in that bigger stitch so that the baby has more room for its arms. So really, it really just all depends. When my youngest was a newborn, I probably would have had to have done this one because honestly, she would have had to have the little holes. She would have had to have had all of it. She needed every stitch she could bear because her little arms as a newborn was about the size of a turkey thigh. I honestly, and it's so funny because she is the thinnest little thing. When she got older, but when she was a baby, I would have to take scissors sometimes and cut slits in the bottoms on the underside of her t-shirt arms, just so she could wear her clothes because her little arms were so fat. She would have needed every stitch she can get, or I'd have just put her in this larger size. Okay. So that's just some of the differences that you can make. Same, and then you can see which look you like the best or what size you're going for. I have to tell you, the more I work with this yarn, this little bit of everything, the better I like it. It has got such a cush to it, and if this was being worn by a baby and the baby was laying down, and had clothes on between its skin and this little coat, this is just like a little cushion. I mean, honestly, it is so soft. Just to press on is so soft. So, next, it's time for us to decide on button style. Okay? Now, tell me if I'm not the only one who has one of these floating around their house. So, in this one, I went with a very like chestnut. I just thought it offset this yellow really nice, and it was sort of in that same soft. This had like a soft butter look to it. Okay, so with this, with the green, and you can do so many fun things with buttons, but on this one, I don't know if I'll do the same color wood, so I'm just going to try a couple of different things. But I will tell you that I think I like how this blonde looks on there. And I'm just going to lay out a few and see what we come up with. I've got a natural and that's another blonde one. I may even have something with a green tint in here. I have a black, which I gotta tell you, I don't like that one. That one's running right into it, isn't it? I have this darker, like mahogany. I think that is too dark. I have these little fun ones that have like little flowers on them, and I think this might be too small. It just might be too easy for a baby to chew on. Let's see what else we've got in here. I've got reds, but that might look too Christmas. I've got this. I like that. Look at that. Yeah, I'm liking this natural one. But I'm kind of a sucker for like natural wood. Also, this that's a little bit rustic. So I think that really I'm like between these. Let's see. I think, oh wait, I found another different one. Okay, I've got this one too, which is more of like a blonde. Okay, I'm going to X that one out. And I think I'm going to X this one out. I think it's a little bit too like oak kitchen cabinet, don't you? Let's X that one out. And let's just look at all three of these. So I'm going to take these two away for a minute and have a good look. I like that. That looks really nice, doesn't it? Okay, let's set it over here. And let's try this one. this little rustic one there. I also like it, but I almost feel like it's too small for the space. So I'm going to X that one out. Oh, here's one I didn't find earlier. I like that, but I think it's too dark. And now let's try this one again. I think I'm down to this one. Or you know, I really feel like this blonde one, it's kind of reversible, but I like it better on that side. I really feel like that little blonde one is the way to go, don't you? Let me know. Leave it down below. Look, I've got this little flower. I think I'm going to make a pink sweater coming up this week that'll be on. So, here is, yeah, I don't like that one as good. So, leave it down below if you saw one you liked better than the one I picked. Let me know. I'm sorry, I'm just pilfering through my buttons. My daughter loves my youngest one. Sometimes she'll come in and she will just get the buttons down and just look through them. Look at that one. That one's cute. And she asked me one day, she said, do you think if I came in here every day that I came home from school and just took one of these buttons that you would even notice it? And I said, eventually. Alright, so I am not a seamstress, obviously. Let me move my buttons out of the way. I know they're noisy. I apologize for that. So I thought, if you're not a seamstress either, if you are, if you are a seamstress, I'm just going to apologize right now at the sacrilege that you're about to see. I am not a seamstress at all. I don't sew that well. I can sew, but I'm not that good at it. But I thought I would show you my technique for putting buttons on, especially when we're dealing with a baby garment and we want them to be extra safe on there, okay? So, this is going to be sewn to the left side right here, which is our right side facing us, okay? And we want to sew it in a place where we've got a double crochet. Right, because we're going to be fastening this on, we're going to be using one of these double crochet stitches, probably this second one right here, as our buttonhole. And we want our coat, just the way it's designed here, it has this sort of flare out look, okay? So it's going to kind of cross and lay kind of like that. So our buttonhole is going to be right around in here or in here, okay? And so that's going to put our button showing up about right here. So I'm just going to lay this right where I want it to be there. Okay, I'm just going to lay that on there like that, and it is going to be a little, probably off to the side a little bit once it's buttoned. Let me see about where this one was. Now this one looks like it was right in there, and I think I'm probably going to do the same thing. And if it buttons a little far over, see, this one buttoned in the second one, and I think that's what I'll do on this one too. Okay, so we're going to place our button right in that first row of double crochet right there, okay? And we're going to come in from our scallop edge, and we're going to come right here about where that second double crochet is, and we're going to put our button sort of right on top of that, okay? Now, if you're not good with a needle and thread, I'm just going to start from the beginning of how I do this, and hopefully this might be good advice for you. I hope it is. So this is how I tie, for those of you who don't know, okay? I know there's plenty of you out there who do, and I apologize if this little instruction gets on your nerves. But for those of you who don't know, I'm going to show you how I knot needle and thread, okay? So I just pull my thread, obviously, through my needle, through the eye of my needle like that, and I do it evenly and bring it down here to meet. My tails are meeting there at the end, all right? And then I take my thread and I roll it around my finger. Just like that, okay? I roll it back and forth a couple of times until it gets rolled up inside of itself. And then I pull it off my finger and I tug. And I've made a knot there that's kind of bigger than just a tied off knot. You see that? And now I do that a couple of times. I'm going to roll it again and roll that knot into itself. See how it kind of gets like that? If you just work your finger back and forth, see, there we are, and there's my knot. And now I'm just going to start rolling it back and forth. Woo! Or throw it away, whichever one. Just wrap it and start rolling it back and forth, just like that. See how I'm doing that? And then roll it straight off my finger. And then tug it down into itself. And you're going to end up with a pretty big knot if you do that a couple of times. Now, my mom, she was always eloquent with everything. She would make one little tiny knot. She would make one little tiny knot. Of course, she couldn't sew nothing, but she could thread a needle. But she taught me how to do that. And hers was always so pretty looking. She'd make one little knot, and there it would be. And it'd be so precious and small. And I'd make mine, it'd be big and bulky. But honestly, I've always figured better safe than sorry. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do it again. All right. The good thing is that this knot that you're making here, it don't matter how ugly it is. It's not going to be seen by anybody ever. Okay, and I'm going to show you why. Now, I just want to make sure it's good and on there, okay? Now, I'm going to take my button. And before I put it anywhere near my garment, I am going to take my needle here and I'm going to put my needle right through one of those buttonholes, okay? And I'm going to pull through, but I'm not going to pull all the way through. I'm going to grab it. See how I grab my yarn right there? I'm just going to grab my yarn so it don't pull through, and I'm going to come out and go into the other hole. See that? And I'm going to pull it through there. And then I am going to take my needle and I'm going to go down here where my knot is. I'm going to put it through the yarn where I've made my knot right here. You see that? See that? And I am going to thread that needle through the thread. See what's happening here? See that? And I'm going to like knot it in itself. And now I'm going to take my button and I am going to put it down right where I want it. Okay? And then I'm going to reach behind it and go ahead and put my needle through. And it's not going to be perfect. It never is. But now my knot is hid underneath my button. And it's just going to look as neat as I'll get out by the time I get done. Okay? Now I'm just going to start. When you're doing this, I always make sure, especially like if I've got a double crochet or whatever it is, come from one side of a piece of yarn to another, okay? You've got open spaces here. You're not going to do yourself any favors if you don't pay attention and get some yarn going over top of these crochet stitches, because what you want is to lock this thread around one of your stitches, okay? So we're going to come across. We're coming out on this side of that double crochet, and I'm going to go across to the other side and make sure I stay on that side of it to put my needle up through my hole, okay? And then I'm going to pull. And now I am literally going to start threading this through one side and then the other. And look what I'm doing here. As I go back, I'm not only going to the other side of that crochet stitch, I'm grabbing up little pieces of yarn. What I want is when I go through here, I wiggle my needle around a little bit until I can feel myself grabbing some meat of that yarn. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to feel an open space when I breeze right through there. I want to feel some resistance when I push through so that I know I'm actually going through the yarn. Because if I'm just going around that one little stitch, if something comes loose, it's going to be real easy to come off of there. Now, if you start to see, like I just now did, one of your little threads coming up, just pull one side of it or the other until you find the one that's loose, and then straighten it back out. And now I'm going to grab a little bit of yarn as I go, and make sure, you know, like you're weaving in your ends, just make sure you've grabbed a little bit of that yarn and taken it with you when you go to push through to bring your needle out the top. I know this is not fascinating for those of you who are really good with a needle and thread, but I figured if you've never done it before, that maybe this might be some good advice for you. You never know. You know, there's no shame in not knowing how to do something. You know, the only shame is if you want to know how to do something and you don't ask, or you never find a resource to show you. So, we weren't all born with needle and threads. And some of us have to kind of work at that stuff. I'm not great with a needle and thread. I can make some curtains. That's pretty easy. And I can make some, you know, I think it's easier on a sewing machine. I can make some cute stuff on a sewing machine. But to hand sew is kind of if you're good at it, that's kind of a gift. My hand sewing is usually sloppy unless I'm just doing something to add an applique like this. Now, just keep going with this until you feel really safe and secure that your button is on. Like, it should be like Fort Knox on there. I know we talked about this at the beginning of the video. Just be really cautious when you're putting anything on a garment that's going to be worn by a baby. You know, I mean, obviously their parents have to watch them, but that's not to say that you don't want to get all your stuff on there good so that you've done what you can on your part. You know what I mean? And we are just about ready to lock this down, I think. Okay, let's go through one more time. And then I'm going to show you how I knot this off, all right? So I do this a lot like when, I'm going to bring this in just a little bit. I do this a lot like when we're weaving in our tails. So what I do is I take my yarn here, or my thread, and I start going kind of underneath my yarn and getting the thick of it there. And I'm weaving it in and out some, okay? And I'm doing the same thing, like I'm reversing direction and just weaving that in and out. I'm going in about 2 different directions. I'm going to go this way, and then now I'm going to go this way. And then I'm going to show you how I knot that down. Okay. Now, when you can feel that it's getting a little bit thick in there, like it's hard to get your needle, it's probably time to start knotting it down. So right before I get that pulled all the way through, you see how I've got some threads still there? I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to pull up on it to make sure it don't get knotted up on itself, and I am going to put my needle right through that loop, and I'm going to start pulling, okay? Now, right before it gets pulled too far, I'm going to go in again. Okay? And then, as it starts going down, as I start pulling up, I'm going to take my fingers down this yarn and I'm going to push down with my fingers so that that knot goes all the way down to the bottom. Okay, and it left it a little bit sloppy right there. And so if you've got some thread hanging, just go in there and grab it with your needle and just kind of do another little weave in and out and sort of flatten it down. Pull it hard, tighten it up. And now I like to make a couple of knots. So I'm going to go in again, pull that up straight, and I'm going to put my needle right through it. Okay, and then I'm going to come almost down to the bottom. I'm going to catch it before it gets there. And I'm going to go in again with my needle and go right through that loop again. And now I'm going to put my fingers on here and I'm going to pull that tight as I push down that knot I'm making. Okay. And now I'm going to go back through my yarn again like I'm weaving my tails. I'm going to go this way. And then I'm going to turn right back around and go this way. And then I'm going to cut my yarn. Okay. This is one of those moments when you say, man, I hope I got that in the right place. Right? Because it probably ain't coming off. And as you can see, you can look between and just see that your yarn is right up. There is no give. You know how sometimes you can pull a button out and you see like there's some yarn or some, some thread just sort of given a little bit. There's none of that here. Okay, and that's what I want, and that's what I want you to make sure of when you're putting a button on a baby garment. Just go until, overkill is just fine, right? Just do it until it hurts. Okay, so here's our first, on this first row here at the end. I don't want to use this first one. I think it might be too far over. I'm going to use this second one, and just use that second notch right there for your double crochet. And put your button right through it. And there you go. Your classy little wool coat. Are they not just the cutest? And I have got some things coming up here on the channel. And if you could and you want to, just hit that subscribe button. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed, I have a pretty big giveaway that I'm kind of excited about coming up. And it's going to involve some of my very favorite yarns. And I cannot wait. I've been... I've had it all together for a while now, and so I've just been waiting for the right time. So if you could hit that subscribe button and also that notification bell so you can be notified when I'm posting a video. I don't want you to miss a giveaway, okay? So comment below. Let me know how you like the pattern, and let me know what selections you made when you were making yours. I'd really love to know how you guys did this. If you made it, you can tag me on Instagram. Let me see what you've done or post me a picture. I would love to see what you're doing. All right, you guys go out and do something you love today. All right, don't forget to take care of yourself. Until next time, bye-bye.